So this is a very, very exciting morning for Sage, the launch of the Sage SME Pulse. This is a piece of research that is really hopefully going to enlighten everyone's thinking and understanding of what's going on in the economy and with regard to SMEs in particular. My name's Ian King. I'm going to be moderating the panel discussion and being your host for this morning. I've been a journalist now, financial journalist, for more than 30 years, and one question that we always used to get asked, particularly by editors as much as anyone, is what are SMEs thinking right now? What's on the mind of SMEs? And that's what's so exciting about the SME Pulse that we're unveiling today, because this is real-time data that will provide insights as to what's going on in the economy, on the ground, in the regions, and across a whole bunch of different industry groups as well. You're going to hear from Steve Hare, the Chief Executive of Sage, about why the SME Pulse is being launched, and then after which we will have a short panel discussion in which hopefully we'll be interrogating some of the data that we've got our hands on this morning. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce now to the stage the Chief Executive of Sage, Steve Hare.
Thank you, Ian, and morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here, and welcome to our new office here with the spectacular views of Tower Bridge, and we've managed to organise the only sunny day this year so far. Today is not just about publishing another report. It's about confidence. It's about trying to create some clarity. It's about the role that SMEs play in building a more productive, more competitive and more digital Britain. When small and medium-sized businesses succeed, the UK succeeds. 2/3 of new jobs is driven by SMEs. So if we care about growth in the UK, we have to care about SMEs. That belief is why we take seriously the responsibility that comes with the data that we hold. Now at Sage we call that data for good, because it's our commitment to using aggregated, anonymised SME data to enable better decision making by businesses, by advisors and by policymakers. We're launching the Sage SME Pulse, a first of its kind view of SME and workforce performance. It's drawn from large-scale, anonymised business data. And we've learned that in uncertain periods, what people need is not noise. It's useful insight, practical tools, and trusted partners. We have to help SMEs translate that effort into faster, more sustainable growth. And that's where digital adoption and AI comes in. And I want to be very clear, Sage is very optimistic about the AI era. Not in a hype-led way, not AI theatre, but finding real solutions for real businesses, for real people. AI should raise capability, but not complexity. Businesses need outcomes that are accurate, traceable, and dependable. They need systems they can rely on and partners they can trust. And that's why Sage's approach is different. Our AI is grounded in three things that really matter in the real world. Finance-grade data, structured, governed, and built for accountability. Now, this launch also reflects something broader about Sage. We do not just build products. We publish real-world data in a responsible, governed way so that businesses and policymakers can separate signal from noise without compromising trust or safety. If we want stronger national growth, we need stronger SME performance. If we want stronger SME performance, we need higher productivity. And if we want higher productivity, we need wider, faster, better digital adoption. That is the journey to a stronger digital Britain. And at Sage, we're committed to playing our part in that transition. And with that, I'm delighted to hand over to our panel and to dig into what the data tells us and what to do next.
So Steve, let me start with you. You've already had a chance to look at what's in the data. What do you think it tells us overall about the state of the economy?
Yeah, I think it's if you're an optimist, the good thing is that there is growth. But the thing that comes out very strongly is this hesitancy. And so we need to, both private and public sector together, we need to find ways of creating the confidence to go for it.
So what jumped out at you when you first saw the raw cuts of the data?
The thing that's really jumping out is this productivity, which the way to resolve that is to drive rapid digital adoption. And at the moment in the UK, that is going slower than it is in other countries. And we need to find ways of encouraging SMEs to adopt these tools.
So Nina, you've had a look at the report already. What do you think this is going to tell you going forward?
On the one hand, there are some signs that SMEs are persevering. You know, I would probably would I say even cautious optimism. But on the other hand, those kind of readings that really talk about confidence into the future, like investment, like hiring, those are actually the ones that are really underperforming. And I think this data is so current, so up to date, certainly much more than official statistics.
I mean, that's a crucial point, Louise, isn't it? I mean, I touched on the sort of journalistic implications of all this, but I mean, policymakers, quite often they are just looking at survey data rather than data from the real world.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's something that is really valuable about this survey. And I think, as Nina said, that timeliness of it as well, especially when, you know, we do see an economy that is constantly evolving. Like we say, you know, we've had the news over the last couple of weeks around the Middle East that will impact on businesses, and to be able to have that really kind of real-time sense, how is that impacting businesses, how is it impacting, you know, the cost that they are facing, that will be important for all policymakers in kind of calibrating, do they need to react, what is the support that they might need to provide to the SME community.
I mean, Steve, presumably this pulse, you're going to publish it regularly. Will you be hoping it gets across the desks of policymakers?
I really hope that what this data does is really help to give politicians, give other policymakers, decision makers, that insight that just brings that to top of mind, that of course we need big companies to be successful, but we need to pay attention to SMEs and how we can help them.
From what Steve was saying there about the Sage SME Pulse, what do you recognise aspects of how you're trading and aspects of your business in the data?
Yeah, I do, and actually I think having real-time data dashboards on what is going on is so much more useful. You know, as was mentioned here, a lot of the stuff you tend to get access to is sort of lagging indicators, and by that time it's actually a bit out of date. You know, our biggest stress is actually, you know, stock. You know, we have to buy a subscription company. You're doing these basically economic models of your customer base and your growth predictions, and essentially like your general vibe of how you think the economy is doing. If you don't feel like people in the UK are going to have disposable income or invest in their health, which is our space, you don't invest quite so much in stock, right? So this stuff is actually all very connected to how you in the C-suite, even in an SME, are thinking not just about who you're going to hire this year and how that growth looks, but also literally just demand planning.
When I saw the data, oh, great, sales are rising for these businesses, but they're not hiring folk right now.
So just to be super transparent, when my company was doing 5 million of revenue, we had 25 people. And we're now doing 35 million, and we have 22 people. It is challenging because, you know, I as an employer am super conscious of you know, running a lean operation that is productive and makes sense. And then me as a British consumer, I'm just as concerned by that trend that I can see. And I couldn't probably have done that 5 years ago.
Although, Nina, I guess the message from Dan there is that he's actually doing more with less. I mean, that is actually productivity growth in action.
There is, yeah, and I mean, productivity growth is needed. It is a bit of a balancing act. I think if you have en masse unemployment, we have seen unemployment tick up. That sort of won't be great either. But I think overall, I mean, I would kind of echo that optimism. Maybe this just means that more businesses, more economic activity is needed.
Does that mean though, Louise, that we're looking at this the wrong way round? I mean, productivity, I mean, I've defined it there as doing more with less. Does that mean, as Nina is kind of hinting there, that maybe unemployment's going to need to tick up if the UK's chronic productivity record is going to need to improve?
So I think the thing here is all about how you make that transition. So I think everybody accepts that we do need to see higher productivity in the UK, and that ultimately is how you have higher sustained wages. So that is a good thing, but we need to think about how we're supporting those people who perhaps are finding it harder to get a job or who are kind of exiting the workforce for a period of time. And I think the message for them as well as employers is around, how do we help them in the skills that they need for the new kind of modern workforce.
One thing that is very clear from the SME Pulse is that employers are slightly hesitant about taking people on.
I think what we need to see is that we do need to see this shift, right? And so part of how you measure that shift is you need more startups in the first place. So last year in the UK, we had about 900,000 new businesses registered, which is pretty typical of what it's been over the last few years. But a good benchmark, so that we don't get complacent, is last year in France, it was 1.1 million. It probably needs to be double. We need to find ways of helping people when you first set up that first business. You need a bit of bravery.
The most scary, overthought through, many months to make any decision, like anxiety-ridden experience of my entire life probably was taking the jump just to be an entrepreneur. We're very good at Britain of obviously putting ourselves down in lots of different ways, but actually the UK is, you speak to German entrepreneurs, they're like, the UK is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's super easy to register a company. It's really easy to start. The government genuinely makes it, like all governments, ours and this one and the last one, make it easy to raise investment. There's a lot of tax schemes that are very successful at encouraging people to give entrepreneurs an actual opportunity and chance. There's a lot of positive tailwinds. And then if you also take in the fact that it's never been easier to start a business, ever, with the tools, the opportunities, etc., that should be a really rosy picture. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did have an opportunity to overtake France with those numbers at all.
Oh, that's encouraging. I mean, Nina, I've seen in the release that Sage have put out, they're talking about companies being poised but waiting, and Dan has kind of hinted at that as well. So what needs to happen? What do they need to hear from policymakers?
I think in terms of fiscal policy, there is a lot of justified skepticism about what we've been hearing from the Chancellor about the next few years. I think the reason for that is there's this narrative that there is now more fiscal headroom, which there is, but that fiscal headroom, in my view, is a little bit fictional because it depends on some very unpopular decisions coming online right before the next election. So I think a lot of businesses are looking at these, penciled in plans and rightfully wondering, well, is this actually what's going to happen? So I think the government needs to provide certainty, but certainty that's believable.
Louise, we haven't really talked about the banks thus far, and obviously they have an important role in providing financing for businesses, large and small. Do you think that the banks are going to benefit from this piece of work, the SME Pulse?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we heard, there is finance out there available for businesses. So it's really about kind of how can the banks really match that with some of these businesses that are out there that are looking to grow and are looking to scale. And I think a large part of that is around making sure that you are kind of investment ready. So that is around making sure you have that really good understanding of your business. You're able to, present both your current environment really well, but also obviously those future expectations, and that you're looking at the right type of funding for your business as well. But I think that, a lot of the banks that I speak to, our members, they're really keen to go out there and lend. They have got those firms available. And I think that's where, like you say, if we can get a bit of that confidence back, that's where we can see the upside in the economy.
How do they really understand what's going on in the minds of their SME customers?
So, I mean, I think a lot of the banks that we speak to, like you say, they might not have as many kind of banks on the high street, but they do have a large regional presence. And we work with them quite a lot through the kind of regional networks that we have as well, to both listen to their clients and listen to our kind of wider membership as well. But I think really making sure that you have got that kind of finger on the pulse is obviously really important. So again, where we can partner with people like Sage and have access to that data as well, I think that's really important.
One of the things we've done in recent months is we've signed a number of partnerships with banks to basically offer embedded services. So this is us combining with a bank so that when people set up their business bank account, they get access to, some very simple recording of their finances, simple accounting, whatever, right? And what we're trying to do now is help capture those businesses, appeal to the digital natives so that the day they set their business up, they're setting their business up in a digital way. And of course, in a digital economy, particularly powered by AI, where you can be using AI assistant, you can be producing those transactions literally as you are leaving. A plumber's leaving your house, they've done the job. They can tell the assistant to issue the invoice. It's all digital. But what that means is there's a real-time view.
Dan, I mean, we've started talking about AI several times during the course of this conversation. How are you and your sort of fellow entrepreneurs deploying it right now?
As a whole company, we're spending time and actually setting aside time to do group training together on the latest tools and how they can help us together in the productivity. Because I think what can be a big downside and a negative is actually you really don't want half your team having rocket fuel and the other half, because they feel like they're too busy, not necessarily being included, they haven't been the right use cases, feeling like they're left behind. It's a non-negotiable, though. The other side of it is it's like a total non-negotiable. Like, everyone has to be using AI-enabled tools because it's completely crazy not to. It'd be like not using the internet 15 years ago. It makes no sense.
That's a leader of a big business, and one into which technology is woven into the very fibres of the business. How are you carrying employees with you on this journey?
Whether you're running a small business or whether you're running a bigger business, at the center of it is humans and human relationships. And then what you're doing is you're using technology to enhance that. But the people that you do have, those relationships and those final decision-making characteristics are really, really important. AI actually could cause greater disconnections faster if humans don't really embrace it and use it in that way to enhance their collaboration.
I mean, Louise, obviously the CBI is an advocate for businesses, large and small. Let's not forget. But I mean, are you picking up anxiety from members about, this is something we need to be doing?
I wouldn't say anxiety. I think it is more on that kind of curiosity. And what we've seen is that people are very much at different parts of that journey. So we've definitely got lots of people who are at that frontier and who are really embracing it. And then we've had a lot of people, particularly, say kind of 6 months ago, who are, I know that I need to be doing this, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to engage with this. But they are keen to start on that journey. And I think that's where actually some of the things like where you've got AI-enabled tools is helpful. It's much easier now to just pick something off the shelf. It's embedded within your business. And actually what we're encouraging people to do is to really just start to use it, to play with it, to see the impact that it can have in their business.
You've mentioned, I think, this morning already once, this term responsible data. What do you mean by that?
Particularly with what we do. We're looking after people's finance, payroll, HR data, etc. Whether it's in today's world, or whether it was in the cloud era, or whether it was, when everything was on people's desktop, that is data which is important to people. And it's important to people because it's partly because it's confidential, but it's also important to people because it's structured, it's accurate, it has to be verified, etc., etc. Our customers trust Sage to use that data in a responsible way. But we're not using that data to, for example, go and sell that data set to people who can then target our customers with adverts, etc., etc. We're very clear. We have those principles published on our website that's not something we do. We use the data in a responsible way that you can trust.
There we go. So, Louise and Nina, I don't know which of you want, but I mean, what will you need to see 12 months hence to know that confidence has returned to the UK economy?
So I think a big thing, like I say, is about that sentiment, both for businesses but for consumers. There are still some challenges at the moment, particularly around the cost of doing business. So I think that commitment that we're not going to see further increases in those costs will be really important, and that should mean those kind of rainy day funds that, again, businesses and also households are holding back at the moment. They've got confidence to go out, spend, and that's what's going to start the momentum and the kind of wheels turning in the economy.
Yeah, I would just hope to see signs that there is more medium and long-term thinking. So if hiring returns at a higher level, if investment into productivity for things that you know aren't really going to be benefiting you until a few years down the line, if I see those things come on, I think for me that'll be the clearest sign that there is genuine optimism returning.
Very good. Well, we're out of time, but before we close, Steve, I wonder if I could ask you to offer a few reflections on what you've heard over the last 45 minutes or so.
We are in this country world class at critiquing the things that don't work, and it's very easy to kind of look and think, well, the grass is greener elsewhere. I think net, this remains a remarkably amazing place to set up a business, grow a business, and to live and work in this country.